Here are 8 tips they're sharing in their joint speech, Growing Your Love. Randy and Susan.
We started out as friends, just acquaintances. We met at Washington State University. We were eating in the same cafeteria, a cafeteria that fed about 1,500 undergraduate men and the 9 graduate women living upstairs of the cafeteria. Most of those boys wanted nothing to do with us because they were terrified of older women. You know how scary I am. You can tell just by looking at me. We often ate at about the same time because I spent a lot of time in my office grading papers and studying for classes and stuff. So I would get to the cafeteria late, just in time to eat.
I was wrestling. The practice would go through dinner time, and they'd make a late plate for me. And so I'd go in, pick up my dinner, and there was this cute graduate student over there, about this tall, just as cute as she is today, eating by herself. I walked up and I said, "Do you mind if I sit with you?" And she said, "Sure." And
Why not?
we started talking. And she was doing all these interesting things, I thought. And it was a world I'd never seen before. She was telling me about collecting birds and living in Milwaukee in the winters and the cold and
Bird gonads.
bird gonads, which embarrassed me too. And we just had this routine, and we started talking to each other, and she was interested in my wrestling and my being an Air Force brat. We lived all over the world. Places like Okinawa, with the beautiful beaches and the life under the water, and going to Mount Fujiyama, and she found those things really interesting. Somewhere along the line, we started liking each other. Neither one of us could afford to go home for spring break. This was at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. My parents had moved down to Southern California near Palm Springs. Milwaukee's a long ways from Pullman, and so we were kind of stuck there.
Neither one of us had any money.
And airfares at that point were absolutely unreasonable compared to today. So we were there, and we had a date, and we haven't stopped dating since.
So tip number 1, be friends. Love is nice, but it's not quite enough. You gotta like each other.
8 years ago, and it was just a couple of weeks ago that it was 8 years, I woke up one morning, I felt crummy. I felt like a beach whale. I weighed 270-something pounds. Everything moved slowly. And I was lying there and I thought, you know, if I walk 20 minutes a day, it's not going to affect everything. I don't have to put a gym suit on. And I tried the gym, and it worked really super for about a week. and I always found reasons not to go back. I rolled out of bed after thinking, well, I can do this tomorrow, start tomorrow, and something in my head said, get your fat ass out of bed and do it now. I walked that 20 minutes, which is about a mile. I think it was about 30 minutes on that trip. And I have walked every day for the last 8 years. Susan does not like walking. And she was having some physical problems. But after 6 months of my walking, she started walking with me. And I thought, wow, Susan is worried about her health, and this is going to help her feel better. She saw how I was feeling better. And I said something to her about, hey, this is really neat that you're working on your health. And she said, oh no, that's not why I started walking. I wanted to be with you.
Oh,
Do things together, even when some of the mundane things, like doing dishes. By the
Making
way,
bed.
note, in the Reader's Digest, that great medical journal, they said that couples that do dishes together have more intimacies. Just saying. Susan.
That's true. Yeah, we've done judo together. That wasn't quite so good because I'm not into throwing people, although I was absolutely astounded the 2 times I was able to throw him. But Taekwondo is working out much better for both of us, and we both like it, not just because of the sport, but because we get to do something together. But we're also not just a team, we're also unique people. And we have our own things. Like Randy does his sculptures. On rare occasions, I go to my studio and paint, but I haven't done that for quite a while. I'm not sure I can still do it. I keep intending to try it again, but I haven't quite made it yet. But I do some writing, I do some editing, I do some knitting and crocheting and watch some movies, and Randy is not, he just doesn't knit well. And it's too bad because Rosie Greer, that football player that played with the Rams long ago, could do all kinds of needlepoint, which is cool. But you got to do your own thing as well.
There are no winners in an argument. If you win or think you win, somebody lost, and if your partner loses, I'll tell you what you lose. Many years ago, we would argue. And I learned that Susan had a problem. She couldn't admit she was wrong.
I really couldn't.
She really couldn't.
I could not say I'm sorry because my confidence level was so low that this was just something of which I was not capable. I simply couldn't do it.
And I learned, probably not very quickly because I don't remember how I learned, but I figured out one day, if I want this thing to end, and I did, and I didn't care, I lost whatever it was we were arguing, became superfluous. I would find a way to say I was sorry. And it worked. And then we'd go on with our lives and find the love that we really had. So sometimes just say I'm sorry.
And sometimes I was driving me crazy because I knew I had caused the problem. but there wasn't any way I could take responsibility for it at that time. I can now, on the rare occasions when I'm wrong. You may have noticed that sometimes we do things like holding hands. Show your appreciation for each other in public, not overly much.
You know you've gone too far when they say, "Get a room!"
And we have heard that on occasion. So we do, which makes everything better.
And in private, hold each other, touch each other, care for each other, give each other back rubs, and concentrate on the person. Concentrate, let the rest of the world go away. Don't be thinking about what happens next or anything. Put your concentration where it belongs. And it makes for a much more loving relationship. It's your turn. Oh. No? Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
See, that one was real.
I think one of the things that we do very well is celebrate each other's successes. She is my greatest cheerleader. She also supports me in my crazy, crazy ideas. Like, I was taking a sculpture class, and I made this sculpture of this lady's head. She liked it a lot and wanted to make a casting. I went home and told Susan, "Susan, I know what I'm going to do when I grow up.
What's that?
I'm going to be a professional sculptor."
Go for it. That's how the conversation went. Have each other's back.
Have each other's back. When she decided she needed to get a degree in engineering, I supported the idea. I worked with her and we spent time. She got a degree in geological engineering, which eventually led to one of her most satisfying jobs as an environmental engineer. And I was so proud of her taking on engineering, which she couldn't do 8th grade math story problems. But she took it on and she won.
Thanks to differential equations. Who knew? You've got to have diff EQ in order to do 8th grade story problems about a train over here and a train over here, and I had no idea. Always keep your sense of humor and be willing to start out laughing at yourself. Your partner will not be quite as comfortable laughing at himself if you can't laugh at yourself, because it's just not cool to laugh at the other guy. Laugh with the other person.
Be a romantic. I must admit, I'm guilty. I love buying flowers for Susan for no reason at all. The one thing that always puzzles me is about half the time when I buy flowers for her, the clerk says, "Well, what did you do wrong this time?" And I just shake it off now, but it used to really bug me. Because I don't have to have a reason. Sometimes I do. One time, I got a set of cups for Susan. And they were teacups and very beautiful things. And I gave them to her over a period of time. One of the things that I did, we went to the melting pot. I surreptitiously slipped in and talked to the bartender. And when they came to get our order, I suggested that she have a margarita. Susan got this, they served it in this teacup with salt around the edge, a margarita. And giving her things is the neatest thing, because that little face just lights up and brightens the whole room. She wrote a poem for me one day. She gave it to me, and it was about how much she loved me. Can you imagine, for 54 years, having this kind of love going back and forth and trading? Our love, we still do things like that. And it's all about the respect, caring, concentrating on each other,
And being friends.
and being best friends.
Best friends forever. Soulmates. You can do this too.
Madam Toastmaster.